Elsie Jensen here. Today we are going to make chicken quinoa bowls with a chimichurri sauce and some homemade sourdough naan. So let's start getting our naan ready. We're going to do the liquid ingredients and then we're going to add in our dry ingredients. So this is going to be a sourdough recipe. So we're going to use a half a cup of sourdough discard. We'll add it into our bowl. I'm going to use my little dough whisk here. See, it's not going to come out for me. Give it a good shake. Grab a little spatula here so I can get all of our sourdough discard out. This is going to be for our naan. Then we are going to add 1/4 cup of sour cream. So I'm just going to kind of squeeze that in here. You could use yogurt if you wanted. I just never have plain yogurt around, so I always use sour cream. And we're going to give this a nice stir and mix our yogurt or our sour cream and our sourdough discard together. There we go. Then we are going to add in 1/8 cup of oil.
You have a question? Does it need to be plain yogurt?
Yes, because this is for naan. It's going to be kind of like, if you've never had naan before, it's kind of like a pita bread or a thick tortilla. So you want it to be plain. I guess it could be Greek or whatnot. It just can't have a flavor. Otherwise, that flavor will be in your naan. So we've got 1/8 cup of oil in here. Give this a nice mix. And now we're going to add in a teaspoon of salt. And then a teaspoon of baking powder. And then a 1/4 of a teaspoon of baking soda. So normally I do a bigger portion of this, but since we're only having, this is going to be for 4 today, I'm not doing my large portion. So just a 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda. Make sure. Okay, and then I'm going to give this a nice stir up. Kind of get it, it's going to start foaming once that baking soda and baking powder kind of hits that sourdough discard and the sour cream. Get nice and fluffy. Perfect. Then we are going to add in 3 tablespoons of water and our flour next. Let me grab some water over here. And we need 3 of them. So 1, 2, 3. Give it a good stir. And then we will be ready for our flour. And we're going to add in 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour. You can use bread flour for this if you want, but it's not essential. So I always use all-purpose because it's a teensy bit cheaper. So we need 1.5. And I'm mixing up my naan first because the dough, you want it, once you mix it up, you want it to sit for about 10 minutes before you start rolling out your naan. It lets the flour kind of hydrate up nicely and just gives you a better end product. So we're going to use my dough whisk here. We're going to whisk this up and then we're going to just let it, we'll knead it into kind of a ball and then we'll let it sit and hydrate while we start prepping the other parts of our lunch today. But we'll be having our naan is going to go with our chicken quinoa bowls, and we're going to make a chimichurri sauce, which will be delicious for also dipping our naan in because it's a very herby kind of oil-based sauce. Let me smush these together, and then we're going to put them out on the counter. We've got kind of a dry shag, but it will incorporate really well together in just a second. Let me pop this here. And we'll just kind of knead it in the form. And this has no yeast in it. The rising aspects comes from the baking soda and the baking powder. And they'll kind of puff up and they'll be a nice pillowy, soft pan bread. It'll be delicious.
You got a question? You know it's for dinner yet?
We will not be cooking dinner tonight. We have a very crazy sports schedule today. We've got Toko, which is an indoor soccer practice, followed by our second day of soccer tryouts, and then soccer practice for my older one. So it is soccer from like 4 to 9 tonight. So no dinner, but we will be doing a late night stream tonight because I've got a couple things I need to prep up, and we're going to start our chocolate sourdough starter. So that will be later tonight. I don't know exactly when because chaos will occur beforehand, and once everyone's settled in and down, we'll probably get that done because I've got a few things to get prepped for the weekend. Okay, so we've got our naan. We're just going to let it sit here, and we're going to let the flour hydrate with the water in it. Okay, let's get, I'm going to have this bring it to a boil. So we have 2 cups of water in here, and we're going to add 1 cup of quinoa. Bring it to a nice boil real quick. And a little bit of chicken bouillon, so it kind of flavors up the quinoa. And this is the tri-colored quinoa. Honestly, I think almost all quinoa tastes the same. Tri-colored, just a little bit prettier. So we're going to add that in here. And then we're going to add a good little spoonful of chicken bouillon. This is going to give your quinoa a nice flavor. It's a great way to flavor the grains before instead of adding something afterwards. So about a teaspoon and a half. I'm going to give it a good stir. And then once it comes to a rolling boil, Bruni, Grace, no barks, we are going to cover it down to low and let it simmer on low for 15 minutes. And then we'll take the lid off and we'll let it sit by itself and fluff it. Okay. So once that comes to a boil, we'll bring it up. Let's start prepping our sweet potatoes that are going to go into the oven to go with our quinoa bowl today. So we're going to do some oven roasted sweet potatoes. Just because I love sweet potatoes, especially in a grain bowl. I call them my grain bowls, but I just think they pair really well. So we're just going to do a nice kind of peel off the flesh here. And you can use a peeler if you want, but I do find a nice kitchen knife or a chef knife does great. Makes it a little bit easier. You really don't lose that much once you've kind of perfected it, and it gets off some of that white, dry, starchier part of the sweet potato. So this is how I also cut my butternut squash and rutabaga, some of those weirder vegetables that aren't really good for peeling. I find a potato works well with a peeler because its skin's a little bit more delicate, but for sweet potatoes, yams, using your chef knife is the way to go. Okay. We'll get these tossed up, especially because I'm not a big fan of sweet potato skins. I know some people leave them on and they roast them, but I just don't think they're that good. Our quinoa is at a good boil now, so I'm just going to give it one more stir. And then we're going to put our lid on and we're going to turn it all the way down to low. And that's going to cook for about 15 minutes. Then we'll turn the heat off, let it sit for 5, and then we fluff it with a fork. Quinoa, super easy. Okay, we're going to cut up our sweet potatoes here. There we go. And you don't want to have them, I'm going to say I'm aiming for kind of like a dice-sized pieces. You don't want them too big because you want them to kind of cook up and be nice and tender. So we'll get these chopped up. And then we're going to cover them with a little bit of olive oil and then some dry Italian spices, basil, and a little bit of oregano. Just gives them a lovely flavor that will pair well with our kind of quinoa bowl here. There. This is kind of a great lighter fare. It's a hot day today. It's getting up to like 86. So, anytime it's hot, I like kind of cooler, lighter fares. Feel it's going to be tough for my old 2 daughters today. They've got You know, Evie has her soccer tryout, and it's going to be like 86 at the soccer tryout, and maybe a little cooler because that was the high today. But it's still going to be hot. There we go. At least it wasn't. I think last year, we didn't know it. She had her soccer tryout, and then she came home and she had a fever of like 103, and it was like, I think it was like 90 degrees outside. Felt so bad for her for that. Poor girl, but she did great. Okay, we're going to put our sweet potatoes on here. And we're going to give them a nice coat of olive oil. And then we'll do our spices. So let me go and grab my olive oil here. So just about a tablespoon. You kind of want to make sure they all get coated, but it doesn't need to be swimming in it. We'll do a little bit of garlic salt. Nice little shake. And then we're going to use, I just got a little bit of dried oregano, but we're going to use the rest of that. This is about a half a teaspoon. Then we're going to use about a teaspoon of dried basil. And then a little bit of, about a teaspoon of Italian seasoning. And now we're going to give them a nice coat in that olive oil and those dried herbs. Really coat up all of the pieces, and then we'll spread them out and pop them in the oven on my air fryer setting at 425. Okay. I'll spread these out.
You have a question? Is dry basil stronger than fresh?
No, it's not stronger than fresh. And I will say fresh basil, I prefer over dried basil. Let me give my hands a quick wash. I feel like dried basil tastes more like, I want to say like marinara sauce, versus fresh basil I think is very like fragrant and lovely. But I will say when you're roasting it like this, the dry basil would stay out more. But if you're eating basil fresh basil stands out more than dry basil. Okay, we're going to pop this in the oven. And I'm going to set my timer here for about, I'm going to do 13 minutes. And that should be about all you need to roast these up. They go pretty fast in the air fryer setting. If you don't have an air fryer setting, you can do convection bake at 425. And it'll probably take about 15 minutes to kind of roast those up. Okay, let's get our chicken marinating. Got 2 chicken breasts here. Grab my meat cutting board. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of fillet them in half and then cut them into thin strips, because we're going to do like a high sear on them, but we'll season them up. But that way you won't have super huge pieces of chicken, because you want nice like thinner strips that will cook up fast and remain their nice like moisture for it. But this is going to be our seasoned chicken for our chicken quinoa bowls, which we'll be serving with some homemade naan and some roasted sweet potatoes. And then we're going to saute up some mushrooms and onions and spinach. And then we're going to make a chimichurri sauce, which is delicious. It's just a great way to add a lot of flavor with some fresh herbs. I was able to harvest some parsley from my plants and some fresh oregano. I have 4 big parsley plants out there growing, and I was able to take off like a couple leaves from each one, but so that I didn't overpick any. So it's exciting when I can do that. I guess we've had so much rain and such lovely sunshine here that they're actually growing quite nicely. Okay, well, if you have any white strips on your chicken, just cut that off. That's the fat, and that's not going to add anything. It's going to just be chewy and not good. It's not like pork fat where you get all that delicious flavor in it. Okay, so we're using boneless, skinless chicken breast. You could also use chicken thighs. Would be great in that. Those are a bit more tender. The thigh meat has a bit more fat than the breast meat, which makes it a little bit more moist, but breasts are still delicious. Here we go. Doing some nice slices here, and then we'll kind of cube it up into little bits And then we'll put them in our bowl and we're going to season these up. Let them do a quick marinade before we kind of saute them. Okay. Get all of our chicken in here. And then I'm going to go give my hands a quick wash. I'm going to take my knife and my cutting board since we're done with the meat. There we go. Okay, let's get these all kind of seasoned up. So we're going to start with some Worcestershire sauce. And we're going to put about, I want to say, maybe a tablespoon and a half. So just a couple good shakes over it. The acidity in the Worcestershire will help make the chicken nice and juicy and tender. We're going to use about a teaspoon of dried basil. I was going to see if I had fresh basil, but my plants were so little. I was like, oh, I can't pick from them because if I do, then it just will take longer and longer for them to really take root. We're going to use about a teaspoon of dried Italian seasoning. And then we're going to do about a teaspoon and a half of garlic salt. And oh, we must have left it right over here. We're going to use some seasoning blend. This is the Costco version of it, but I'm pretty sure it's just Mrs. Dash's, which is just an all-around seasoning blend, but it's lovely. We'll use about a teaspoon of this. And don't be afraid to season your meats because they'll just have great, delicious flavors. And it will turn out lovely. Let's get this. I'm going to toss my chicken here in. We've got our Worcestershire, our seasoning blends. We're just really coat everything and we'll let it sit for a few seconds and really start to kind of do kind of a little marinade before we saute them up. Okay. Just making sure they get all coated in those herbs. And I find when you're doing like a quick marinade, like real quick, like let it sit for 5-10 minutes, use a little bit more spices. That way you can bring out that flavor versus if you have plenty of time to let them sit and marinate. Okay, let's slice up. I've got a half of a yellow onion here. We're going to slice it up and we're going to start sauteing it for our bowls. I'll take off this top kind of brown skin layer. It won't be any good. And then I'm going to do kind of like a thin, stringy slice on them because I think that will be just delicious versus a smaller kind of a cubing on it. There we go. And I'm going to do it on my back burner here. Let me see if I get it all on there. I always say I need a bigger stove. And we're going to put a little bit of olive oil in here. You don't need too much. That's like a teaspoon. And then I'm going to put my onions in here. We'll spread them all apart. And we're going to let these caramelize. You really want them to really caramelize and bring out their flavors so that they just taste delicious in our bowl. And at the very end, we'll add a pinch of garlic salt just to make them kind of that sweet savory. Okay. Let's prep up our chimichurri sauce while we're waiting. Okay. So I've got about 1/4 of a red onion. I'm going to do kind of a small chop up in there. We're going to be adding this into my little blender and we'll give it a couple like blends on it. So you don't have to make them super small, but you don't want to leave them huge either. You could also do this in a food processor if you want. So we're going to use about 1/4 of a red onion, which is kind of close to 1/4 of a cup as well. You could use shallots if you wanted to, but I would avoid the yellow or the white onions. Those are a bit too astringent for this. You want a milder onion. And then we are going to add some garlic. Let me grab a spoon here. And I'm going to grab my lemon while we're over here. And we're going to put in about a tablespoon of garlic. If you're using fresh garlic, you'll probably want 4 to 5 minced up cloves. But I find garlic works great for this as well. And then I have some fresh parsley that I got from my garden. And I'm going to give this a quick little chop up. And we'll add this here. So this is about, I want to say, a tablespoon and a half of fresh parsley. Our main green thing in here is going to be cilantro. So this is more of a cilantro chimichurri versus a parsley based, because I had a lot of cilantro. I've got some fresh oregano, and we're going to peel off these leaves, kind of get rid of some of those stalks, because that will just leave you more of a tough sauce. And I will say this chimichurri sauce is delicious on pretty much any protein. It's just so flavorful, and you just can pour a little bit on steak, chicken, pork, fish. It's just lovely. Give this a quick mince. This is about a tablespoon of fresh oregano. I'm going to give my onions a quick toss over here. Just get them all coated up in that olive oil. And now I've got a big bundle of cilantro over here. We're going to pull out a couple stems I see. We're going to give it a nice chop. We're going to also add this to our blender. So this is about a half a cup, maybe a little bit more, of fresh cilantro. Now chimichurris, they either have a cilantro base or a parsley base as their main. And so depending, if you don't like cilantro, then just go all parsley. But I do find cilantro in a chimichurri is lovely. It's very different from just a straight up parsley one. Okay. I'm going to add this in here as well. And then we're going to use some fresh lemon juice. I'm going to start with 1/2, depending on how much you kind of want, around a tablespoon. So we'll see how juicy this is if I need to add a little bit more. I think I'll need a little bit more. Sometimes you get a lemon that is super full. And that was, I want to say, probably a 1/2 tablespoon, maybe close to 2 teaspoons, but we'll add a little bit more in here. There we go. And then we're going to add in about a tablespoon of vinegar. I'm using balsamic. Red wine vinegar is also delicious. So we just want about a tablespoon of this. And we're going to add in some olive oil. Might have to add in. You want about 2 tablespoons of olive oil. We'll see if I need to add any more. That one's done. Let me give my onions a quick stir right here. Getting a nice little sizzle on them. I'm going to turn it down just a little bit. I got a little lemon juice in my cup. There we go. Okay. I'm going to grab another olive oil real quick. Here we go. I always say I go through a lot of olive oil, and this one's out. So I had about a tablespoon in there, but you want about 2 in here. 2 to 3, because you kind of want it to match your lemon and vinegar ratio, almost like a vinaigrette. There we go. Then we're going to add some garlic salt and then some black pepper. We want about, I want to say, a 1/2 tablespoon of garlic salt for our chimichurri.
Yeah, question. What does astringent mean?
Astringent means really strong, really powerful flavor. So with onions, with a yellow onion and a white onion, when you don't cook them up, that flavor is really strong, versus shallots and red onions are much more mild. So it's just very strong and powerful. Let me grab my pepper over here. And, you know, it's like one of those things, once you realize like certain onions are better for certain things, it makes a big difference. We're going to put about a teaspoon of black pepper in here. And I knocked off my little hand towel. Okay, let's give our onions one more toss, and then we're going to blend these up. Okay.
So you have a question? What's the difference between olive oil and avocado oil?
So olive oils come from olives, avocado from avocados. They have different smoking points on it. Avocado oil actually has a much higher smoking point than olive oil, but it is more expensive. But they're taste-wise, they're very similar. I want to say olive oil might have a little bit more lemony of a taste to it, but they're both lovely oils to use. Okay, I'm going to give this a quick blend. And give it a shake, and then we're going to go get our sweet potatoes in just a second. Beautiful. So now we have a just gorgeous chimichurri sauce. So flavorful, really very herbalicious. Okay, let's toss these onions, and then we're going to grab our sweet potatoes, see if they are ready out of the oven. Herbalicious, it's delicious. It's fergalicious. It can be a word. If emoji's a word and all these other crazy words are words, herbalicious can be a word. I coin it. We've got our lovely sweet potatoes here, nice and tender. Let's pop that right here. They're nice and toasty hot. Put them on that pan there. Okay. Let's get our chicken cooking and the rest of our meal up. So we have our herb roasted sweet potatoes there. They were tossed in Italian spices, basil, oregano, olive oil, and garlic salt. So they will be nice and just herby and delicious in our quinoa bowls. Okay, give us a toss. We're going to warm up our oil here. Let me check. Perfect. I'm going to turn off my quinoa now because it's been about 15 minutes. And let's turn on our skillet over here, and we're going to get ready to make some naan. Okay. So we're going to let the oil warm up for the chicken until it's nice and hot, and then we'll drop that chicken in. I'm going to divide this up into kind of 4 pieces for our naan. So each one will get a nice kind of big size naan. We'll roll it into a ball.
You have a question, what's naan?
Naan is like a really soft, tender pita bread or like a super thick tortilla. It uses either a yogurt or sour cream base in it. No yeast, which is different from thick tortilla. It uses either a yogurt or sour cream base in it. No yeast, which is different from pita bread. But it has a nice kind of pillowy, soft texture. So it's like a pan bread, a fry bread. It's very common in Indian cuisines. It's delicious. We're going to roll it out. And it has baking soda and baking powder in it, which will help it kind of poof up some. So you can roll it out. It doesn't need to be super thin. But then we'll cook it on my skillet right here. Oh, did I turn that off? Let's see. Slide that. Turn the wrong one on to warm up. Okay. So once this is nice and hot, we will put our pillowy naan on there, and it will cook and kind of bubble just a little bit, not super much, not like pita bread. Pita bread makes a big puff. This one will just do a mild puff. But let's chop up our onion or our mushrooms to add to our onions here. We've got a nice caramelization on them, which means we'll have some just delicious flavors. There we go. And we're going to sprinkle just a little bit of garlic salt on the onions to kind of season them up. Not much. They don't need much. They shine on their own. That caramelization, the natural sugars in the onions come out when you heat them up, and that gives them that nice rich brown color. There's a lot more sugar in onions than people realize. But that's where they get that lovely flavor when you brown them. Okay. got those mixed. We are going to slice up. Well, you know what? I think my oil is hot. It just bubbled at me. So let me do a bubble test first. You don't want to put it in when it's not hot enough. Pretty good. Well, there we go. It's good. We'll add in our chicken. And we're going to let it saute up. I'm going to do about half and half because, as you can see, my pan over here is bigger and it's pushing this one off, so that side's really hot. So I'll do half my chicken there, and then we'll toss it. Let's slice up these mushrooms, and we're going to add them to get sauteed in our pan with our onions. And these are just baby bellas. Delicious. They're a bit more meaty than like a white button mushroom, and they only cost a teeny bit more, but I do think they are a better mushroom than a white one. Have a bit more flavor. There we go. Okay. There's a nice. And let me grab a bowl. So this is kind of like when you make these great grain bowls, it's like an assembly station where you can put a little bit of every vegetable in it. It's going to be a really pretty bowl, but it's delicious. And then you'll drizzle with the sauce. So we've got our caramelized onions here. I'm going to add a little bit of oil in this pan for our mushrooms. And we're going to saute up our mushrooms.
You have a question? Is it a busy night tonight?
Very busy. We have a lot of soccer today. We've got 3 different soccer things at 3 different times. So no dinner stream tonight, but we will be doing a late night stream because I'm going to start my chocolate sourdough starter. And I have a couple other things I'm going to kind of make up tonight. Let's see. Get our chicken tossed over here. You see how when you add it in nice and hot, you're going to get this lovely brown sear on it, crisp it up. It's going to be just absolutely delicious for our quinoa bowls. Okay, I can see our skillet over here is nice and hot, which is perfect. I'm going to turn it down to about a 5 now, and we're going to let it cook. You do not need to add butter to this skillet because you have oil in your naan, so you don't need to add any more. And then we'll roll this guy out. And once you have your skillet heated up, you do want to turn it down because if you keep it on too high, you'll end up getting like some black spots on your thing versus a nice like golden brown. There we go. But it is a thicker, delicious type of bread. Just yummy. It's very soft and pillowy. The yogurt or the sour cream, I use sour cream in it, but it keeps it a very tender bread. Okay. Our chicken. I'll flip these over, and then I'm going to get a bowl. These are almost ready to come out the first batch. Let them just cook for about 1 second. Let me toss our mushrooms over here. See, lovely. We want them to kind of get a nice little brown sear on them. I'm just going to give them a smidge more olive oil. I find mushrooms are like sponges. They soak up all of it. And so I want them to crisp up nicely.
You have a question? Do you check the temperature of the chicken, or how do you know when it's done?
I'll know by the way it feels when I'm pinching it with my tongs and the look of it. So these are cut pretty small, so these will cook up really fast. And you know, once you're squeezing it and it's firm, like not hard because then you've kind of overcooked it, but not squishy, then you know it's cooked all the way through. But I will say, you know, when you cut them up small like this, it really doesn't need that much time to broke it. There we go. We've got our naan cooking here. I'm getting my spatula out. We got the nice little bubblies on it. Turn it down just a smidge. I think one side is, that side's hotter. That is my mushroom one. Okay. This first batch feels like it is all ready. And you can look, it has all pretty much a nice golden brown color on it. We're going to pull this chicken out, and then we're going to get our second batch in. There was so much flavor with all those herbs in it. It just makes it lovely, which is also why you want to kind of cook it up like slowly, like with lots of spices on it. Like heat that oil up nice so it cooks up fast, retains it. Right there. Okay. We're going to spread it out. I'm going to try to coat it in all of the oil so it doesn't kind of stick to the fry pan as much. And we're going to just let it saute nicely. Okay, let me grab a, pop this on. Nice pillowy soft fried bread. I'm going to turn it down. Now, the trick to keeping your naan really soft in between it is to grab just a little bit of butter, room temperature butter, and you just give it a nice little rub, and it will be delicious. It's got a nice kind of pillowy, soft texture to it. Okay. Give this a stir. We're starting to get a nice kind of browning on our mushrooms here. So we're getting close to being just about ready with those. Okay. Man overboard. We'll flip these around. And then always just when I'm flipping, just make sure you get everyone over so that you're not just cooking one side the whole time. But if you're afraid of undercooking chicken, just cut it smaller. It cooks up faster than you think. It's when you leave your chicken really thick, that's when you have more likely to leave it raw or overcook it because you're trying to cook it till it cooks all the way in the middle. Okay. We are almost ready with the mushrooms. Let's check on our naan over here. See? Beautiful. You can tell my skillet's at a much better temperature. The other one was a little hot on one side. It's not completely burnt, but this is the perfect kind of brownness to it. There we go. We got our mushrooms. We're going to get a little bit of garlic salt in the mushrooms here. Gives them a nice little flavor that we'll add to it. You don't need to do too much because we have a chimichurri sauce that's going to go over, but just a little bit. The salt in it also helps the mushrooms kind of sweat out their liquid, which just makes them a bit more flavorful. But I do like them to crisp up a bit first. I don't put the salt on them right away. Okay. Let's see how we are doing here. Beautiful. See, the first one cooks the second one cooks much faster than the first one. Do a little bit of butter on it. Spread it all the way around. And now we're going to roll out our next one. And as I say, you want to roll it out thinner than you think because it does poof up quite a bit. And it cooks very fast. There we go. I'm stealing all the chicken over there. My husband's eating the first round of chicken. I can't leave anything by him. He's not touching the sweet potatoes, though. I noticed that. Okay. We got these just about ready. So I'm going to push my onions over, and we're going to move our mushrooms to the other half of this. for when we do our assembly line. And then I'm going to throw in, and we're going to saute up some fresh spinach. You can use lots of different veggies, but I find either spinach, snap peas, snow peas, they are all really great for this, even kale. It just makes for a lovely thing.
The chat brought up a good point. The cameraman tax.
No, the cameraman tax. I think he gets paid fully afterwards in a delicious meal. I guess I'll let it go. Suppose. Now we're going to put a big bunch of here. Spinach always shrinks down to nothing. It disappears. Our chicken over here is just about done. It has just a lovely golden crisping on it. Flip this over. Clean that up a smidge. Beautiful. And you've got our lovely, the naan. I love naan, especially when you cook it fresh. It's so good. Let's toss. Always a little bit that jumps out here. And I just used some of that residual olive oil that was in there with the mushrooms. You don't really need to add much more. Spinach kind of sweats out some liquid, so you can kind of just use a teeny bit. There we go. Now our chicken is nice and ready here. I'm going to turn this off. We're going to fill up our next one. Beautiful. Okay. And they have all those little like herby, crispy bits on them. Will be so flavorful. And this just mixes so well into the quinoa. So we've got our roasted chicken there. And then we put this over here since it's nice and hot. Let's see how we are toasting up. That is just about done. We are about done with everything now. I'm going to give this a little turn. Beautiful. Just kind of spread these out, and then I'm going to turn off because you don't want to cook your spinach too long or it will start to wilt like completely and turn soggy. So I always stop it where it's still very leafy, but then within the next minute or two it will settle. We'll sprinkle a little bit of garlic salt and just season it up. If you want to, you could add like a splash of cream and just give you a nice creamier flavor to it. But we have the chimichurri sauce, so I'm going to leave mine plain. But if you wanted a little bit more smooth, that would do great. Okay, let's pop this one out. We're going to give it a nice coat of butter. I'm going to roll up our next naan. We'll have it going, and then I will plate up a bowl. But let's get this one toasting while we do that. We'll fluff up our quinoa. It's been sitting for, we turned it off about 5 or 6 minutes ago, and we're going to fluff it with a fork because quinoa gets pretty fluffy.
While you have a minute, do you want to go over what you're doing tonight and the fact that we're going to start doing a couple member late night lives?
Yes, so we're going to be doing we're going to do our, our chocolate sourdough starter. I think we're doing an exclusive, and so that on there for our members who are, who have joined us in our journey. And we're going to make up, I think, I got to get a couple snacks ready for this weekend because we're busy. So, and then we'll be prepping up some sourdough stuff along with our starter kind of journey there. Later this night.
So we'll do that a couple of times.
Yes, we're planning to do that a couple of times, do a couple exclusive lives for those who are a part of our joined us on our journey so far. So there, look how beautiful and fluffy our quinoa is. And we cook that in some chicken broth, and so it will be just lovely. Now we are ready to assemble our bowl. So we'll assemble it the way a normal person eats it. And then the way my husband eats it is really just the chicken in the bowl with the naan. His way is not a real way. So let's start with our quinoa. And we're going to scoop it up. You always want to fluff it with a fork versus a spoon. The spoon can kind of clump it down, but the fork leaves it just lovely. Probably could have used a bigger fork for this. But here we've got a nice layer of quinoa. And then we're going to take our roasted sweet potatoes, add them on one portion. I love sweet potatoes. And the rest, we'll do it right here in the middle. We're going to add in our sautéed spinach. Nice little bundle here. And then we've got our sautéed onions, our sautéed mushrooms, and then we'll get a nice generous serving of our sautéed chicken and those nice herby spices. And then what makes it a dream is our chimichurri sauce. And we're going to just pour this right over the top. And then when you do and you eat it, you mix it together. And this adds such a large burst of flavor. And let's not forget our homemade naan to go on the side with it. But it's going to be absolutely delicious. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, show you what we're making, hopefully teach you guys something along the way. We do upload all of our videos to the link on the page. So if you ever want to recreate any of these recipes at home, you can just go find that video, watch again, and cook along with me again. And we also offer a membership that has, we do exclusives with that. We have extra videos, recipe cards, more stuff about our family. Like tonight, we're going to be doing an exclusive for it. If you want to join us on that journey, that would be awesome. But again, thank you so much for joining us here today. Don't forget to like